Good morning, dear friends. Welcome to this Conscious Living Spirit Center in this beautiful Sunday morning. We hope you and your family members are all well and healthy. We continue living under these challenging times, and we are just grateful for being here another day. Before we get started, I want to greet everyone, Giselle, Carlos, everyone else that is joining. If you guys can just confirm that you can hear and see me well, that would be much appreciated. And while I wait to see your comments, as usual, we will start with an initial reading just to set our minds and bring our hearts together. We will start with a reading from the book Living Spring from, there's sun here, from our dear Chico Xavier and Emmanuel. And we will go for initial prayer. And then right after, we have our dear Suzana Simoes with the lecture of today. So thank you, Gisela, for confirming that technology is in our side here. So we'll jump right into the reading them. It's again from the book Living Spring, lesson 66, Wake Up and Rise. It is an invitation for us, actually from Paul of Tarsus, from the letter or epistle to the Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 14. And it says, Wake up, you who sleep, rise from amongst the dead, and Christ will shine on you. So sometimes when we read the New Testament or the Old Testament and some of this passage, it's kind of hard to understand. And we do have the blessed Spiritist doctrine through Emmanuel here to explain what does that mean to all of us. Thousands of our brothers and sisters have been asleep with no sign of ever waking up, while the glorious time of their life on earth passes uselessly by. They vaguely perceive the ongoing production of nature, but they do not remember their obligation to do something for the progress of society. Faced with the tree loading itself with fruit, or the bee making its honeycomb, they do not remember the simple duty of contributing to the common prosperity. Generally speaking, they resemble corpses decorated with costly adornments. There comes a day, however, when they wake up and begin to praise. There are many brothers and sisters whose eyes are open, yet their soul is in the horizon position of idleness. Hearts that have awakened must arise to life, to the work of sowing and harvesting the good, so that the Master may shine on them. Let us strive to alert our sleeping brothers and sisters, but let us not forget the need to help them emerge from that state of affairs. We need to know how to mobilize the right means to aid those who are close to and those who are not close to, but who need to arise to the blessings of Jesus. Making suggestions is not enough. Those who prescribe service and virtue to their neighbors without having first prepared their understanding by means of the spirit of fraternity are like the strict instructor that demands from his or her students full knowledge of a certain book without having first taught them to read. Paul said, Wake up, you who sleep, rise from among the dead, and Christ will shine on you. And we repeat, let us awaken to the superior life and arise in doing good works, and the Lord will help us so that we may help others. It's a beautiful invitation to all of us. And with that, once again, welcome everyone. And we invite you, if you wish to do so, to close your eyes and together calm our minds in our hearts, feeling the whole set of blessings that we receive from above in this day for the peace and the protection in our health, in our ability to be here in the name of Jesus, to remind ourselves once again of all of his teachings. Dear Master, we thank you for your sacrifice, for your benevolence, never giving up on us despite our mistakes and errors. Please, Master, be with us. Allow our guardian angels, our protectors, spirits, to also be present with us, helping us to be open minded, to be humble, so that we may absorb as best as possible the lessons that we are going to receive in these very moments, the lessons that represent the food, the bread to our souls, reminding us of our immortality in this temporary material existence. Please, dear Lord, bless all of us here connected. Bless all those who may not be able to join us this morning for different reasons. And inspire and protect and guide our dear sister Suzana, who prepared with so much love the reflections that she is about to share with all of us. And with that, we ask your blessings and your permission to begin our humble session this morning. Thank you, and so be it. Dear friends, with that, I will pass it to Suzana. Suzana, good morning and welcome. Have a blessed lecture.
Good morning, Marcos. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Well, it's been a good while since I was here last speaking. So I'm actually very happy to be here in the first lecture that I'm doing this year with all of you to share some of my thoughts around the topic of immortality. We are starting a new year, 2021, after undergoing the challenges of 2020 that remain with us at this time. During 2020, as the pandemic started, we have had the opportunity to hear many lectures online with many different speakers in different parts of this world speaking about the lessons that we perhaps had to learn from this situation that we find ourselves in. And many different aspects had been brought up. Many really wonderful reflections have helped us to to learn from the challenges that we face. But there is one thing to me that it seems like a big lesson that the pandemic has brought to the front line of our existences, which is our necessity to face forward our own mortality. This is a difficult and painful and challenging topic to talk about the end of our physical life, the end of our organic, our biological life. It is a topic that normally we avoid. It's better if we don't really talk about it. And there are reasons why we tend to avoid talking about our own mortality. We are very, very much connected to the material world. When we read question 941, for example, of the Spirit's book, there is a statement that says that we are carnal individuals, more connected to corporeal life than to spiritual life. And this is in agreement with what we read in the Gospel according to Spiritism on chapter 3, where we learn that we live in a type of world where matter prevails over the spirit. So, what that means to us is that we are spirits in this physical experience who deeply, deeply identify with the material world to the point where, although we know differently, spiritualists, spiritists, we still identify to the material world as if this is the real or the primary world. We also withdraw our value as human beings from this identification with the material, with the physical body, for instance. So, youth, physical beauty, body type, all those things are means from which we gather our sense of worth as human beings in a paradigm that is really very materialistic and contrary to the things that we believe cognitively, intellectually, that we talk about, but there is this real gap in between what we know and how we experience our daily lives. And part of it is because, as Kardec and the spirits have posted on the codification, we have this deep, deep identification with the material world. In Emmanuel, in his pages, he will talk about the relationship between spirit and the physical body in our level. And he talks about it as the body being this very coarse and dense armor that takes away the lucidity of the spirit. Once we are incarnated into what he's going to call a corporeal castle or a prison for the spirit, he says that our senses are buffered. The perception, the sensations of the spirit are deeply, deeply limited. The physical brain, he compares the physical brain as a dark camera, and he's going to talk about this relationship, explaining to us that the spirit is really, really imprisoned and limited by the physical body. So any sensory perception that we have through our physical senses, the physical senses, they work as like tiny, tiny little cracks that allow a little bit of light into the spirit's awareness. So this description that Emmanuel brings to us speaks about the incredible limitations that the spirit experiences once it is inside the physical body, which is different when we are in more advanced realms. In more advanced realms, the physical body does not impede so much the perceptions and the expression of the spirit because the physical body is less dense. Therefore, the spirit, although incarnated, it is in closer contact with the spiritual realm and the spiritual reality. So this condition, the condition of our physical body being so dense, which is a reflection of where we stand in our evolution, is contributes for the spirit to also identify with this material realm because it loses some perspective of the spiritual realm. It loses touch with the spiritual realm to a great extent. Obviously, We are always in contact, as we know from spiritism as well, but relatively speaking, it is as if we are confined, and as Emmanuel says, they're like just tiny little cracks that allow some of these perceptions to come in and to bring to the spirit some lucidity. I apologize because my dogs are going crazy right now. I'm alone in the house. There's nothing I can do, so I hope that this is not being disturbing too much the transmission. But going back to where I was, so when we think about the physical death, the death of the physical body, obviously this is a very challenging and painful experience for us in our evolution. Whether we are talking about our own physical death or whether we're talking about the loss of loved ones, it is very challenging. And it is very challenging. And the sorrow that we experience is also very legitimate because there is a huge void, an emptiness of that physical presence that we experience, and the longing and the void that opens in our lives. It is a trial for all of us, given the conditions that we live in. And I'm not the one who is saying that. Kardec, in question 934 of the Spirit's book, will ask the spirits the following: if the loss of the loved ones is not a legitimate cause of suffering for the ones who stay behind. And the spirits are going to answer by saying that pain is legitimate, that the sorrow is legitimate in our stage of evolution. He's going to, let me see if I can find the answer here. Okay, I found it. All right, let me go back. Doesn't the loss of loved ones cause us suffering and a legitimate source of sorrow, since such loss is both irreparable and independent of our will? And the spirits are going to say, this cause of sorrow, so they are agreeing with Kardec's question, this cause of sorrow strikes both the rich and the poor. It comprises a trial or an expiation and a law for all. So, as we can see, the sorrow that we experience again is legitimate. For us, in our condition, in our in the in our evolutionary moment, the loss of loved ones is a true reason, is a trial. Sometimes it can be an expiation. So the idea of immortality, although will bring us comfort, we're going to talk about that, does not erase, does not minimize the void and the difficulties and the challenges that it represents for us, the loss of a loved one. Now, it would be the concept of immortality will help us to face forward this inevitable occurrence in our lives. We, as I mentioned before, often try to avoid talking about those things, but Joana de Angelis will remind us that physical death is an unavoidable part of the existential program. Do not believe to be an exception, because such a privilege does not exist. So, although it is difficult for us, for all the reasons that I have mentioned before, this connection, what it represents for the spirit to be inside the physical body, the painful experience, the trials of separation, right? This is not reason for us not to talk, to address, to face forward the issue of our physical mortality. Sometimes we can use the idea of immortality to actually shield ourselves from addressing these phenomena that we all are going to face one day. So sometimes we can use the cognitive understanding that we are immortal beings to minimize the difficult situation that we all are going to face one day. And it seems to me that would make more sense to bring immortality to our thinking and to our emotions in order to talk about the fact that one day this physical body that we identify so deeply and that we value so much will die. It seems to me that would be a best practice for all of us to face it, to talk about it, to reflect about it, and to ask ourselves questions that could be very helpful, such as, what does it mean to me? What will it mean to me when my body dies? What do I wish for the last days, moments, weeks, months, when I know that that is unavoidable, perhaps because of a terminal disease? How do I want these days to be? What is going to be important for me on these days? Do I want to be sedated? Do I want to be awake? Do I want to be engaging with my loved ones? Do I want to be in an ICU, in a ventilator, or would I rather have my days in my home surrounded by the people that I love? These are important things that we need to think about. And in order to think about without anxiety, without fear, it is important. That's when the concept of immortality can really help us not to shield away, not to move away from our physical death, but giving it the attention and the importance that it has, because this transition, this moment of our lives when we are leaving behind this garment that we have used, can have tremendous impact on our transition and our arrival to the spiritual life. We know that in the moments of our physical death, so much healing can take place, so much forgiveness can happen, so much reconnection and healing can take place if it is lived fully awake, fully consciously. So just a brief window into thinking what immortality can do to help us to think and to process the idea that our physical body will perish and we will die physically. So that's one ways in which immortality can help us, preparing for our own death. But it can also give us tremendous amount of consolation when we lose a loved one, knowing that they are alive, knowing that death only exists at the physical realm. Spiritually speaking, there's only life. There's always life in the universe. We are either alive in the physical body or we are alive outside of the physical body. And the concept of immortality will also help us in our afterlife, as we'll see a little later into our reflection this morning. All right, so the concept of immortality seems to be very helpful and instrumental and a powerful tenet in Spiritism. Where can we go to find some elements that can help us to build and to strengthen this idea of immortality within our minds, but also within our emotions, our feelings, our souls? So I chose 10 questions from the Spirit's book. We're going to go over them rather quickly, but it's just to show, like, I really love these small exercise because it shows that as we study the Spirit's book, not one time, but many times, we start seeing things that at first we can't see, and making connections and pulling little pieces together and building some, really nice ideas and body of knowledge that can be very helpful to us, with ideas that many times, in a little bit of an arrogant way, we say this is so basic. But it's a basic that's really not basic. Because although basic, when we read, it's not basic because we don't live. We're still far from truly living what we call to be basic, such as question 23 of the Spirit's book that says, what is spirit? And the spirits are going to reply to Kardec saying, the intelligent principle of the universe. Oh, so the universe has an intelligent principle, has also a material principle, and has God. And then in question 76, now Kardec asked, what is a spirit on 23? Now on 76, he's going to ask about spirits again, and he's going to say, how we may define spirit. Kardec is asking the same question pretty much, but here spirit comes with a capital S, right? So there is a tiny, tiny little difference, or maybe not so tiny difference, and the spirits are going to repeat. We can say that spirits are the intelligent beings of the universe beyond the material world. And here, if we look at it, the spirits now are referring to the word spirit as the individuality that survives the death of the physical body. In question 85, Kardec is going to ask the spirits, which of the two, the spirit world or the corporeal world, is the principal one in the order of things? And the spirits are going to respond, the spirit world. It is pre-existing to and will survive everything else. So again, basic but not so basic, because although we know intellectually that the spirit world is the principal one, the primary one, we still live, and our lives here, our day to day, show an incredible attachment to this reality. And we live many times, our actions, our thoughts, our feelings, our relating is going to be very materialistic, meaning giving this world in the present moment, treating it as if this here is our primary reality. On question 134, Kardec is going to ask, what is the soul? Soul is an incarnate spirit. Okay, so we have the spirit, the individuality. When it's inside the body, we're going to refer to it as a soul. And then on 134a, let me make sure I'm understanding this. What is the soul before its union with the body? A spirit. Is that clear? Right? The spirits probably were thinking. Is that clear to you now? But on 149, Kardec is going to say, what is the soul transformed after its death? It becomes a spirit again. It returns to the world of the spirits that it had temporarily left. So we leave our primary world, the principal, the essential, the real one, temporarily. We come in here, we take this physical body, right? And for a short period of time, and then we return to our home, to our primary, to the principal reality that where we all come from. On question 150, does the soul preserve its individuality after death? Yes, it never loses it. What would the soul be if it did not preserve its individuality? So the spirits are telling not only we return, but we continue to be who we are. In other words, we don't have our physical bodies anymore, but we continue to be ourselves with our emotions, with everything that we have learned, with our intellectual abilities, with our talents, with our faculties, with our virtues, everything emotional, feelings, intellect, cognition. This is who we are. And all that remains untouchable as we transition from one realm to another. Our feelings, our connections, the loves that we have developed and nurtured, the connections that we have made, all that remains with us. How can the soul, now we are in question 166, How can the soul that has not reached perfection during its corporeal life complete the work of its purification? So, right here, the spirits are going to bring the concept of reincarnation by saying, by submitting to the trial of a new existence. So, therefore, they're bringing the idea that not only we come from a world that pre-exists, we incarnate for a temporary period of time, right? We go back to the primary or principal realm and we return. We return because we have yet things to learn. On question 224, what becomes of the soul during the intervals between incarnations? So there is an interval, there's a time where we are up there, let's put it this way, right? In this different realm, in this different vibration. And during these periods of time, we are called errant spirits. Spirits who are aspiring and waiting for a new chance to return, to continue their progress, to continue their journey, to continue to learn, to continue to experience the physical realm in order to understand that there is nothing truly physical about our lives. And finally, in question 170, going back a little bit, and this is the 10th question from the 10th that I said I was going to bring. What is the spirit becomes after its final incarnation? A blessed, a pure spirit. So there is a point in our journey where we are not anymore under the imposition of reincarnation. We have accomplished the learning necessary to be called blessed, to be happy. At that point, we don't need to reincarnate. We have achieved the freedom to be anywhere we need to be to the fulfillment of our duties or we wish to be. It is the freedom of a spirit who is pure, who is able to manifest all its wisdom and all its unconditional love. So, again, like I said, 10 questions that perhaps you would say, oh, I know this. This is incredibly basic. But as we look at our lives, there is absolutely nothing so basic about it because I can recite, maybe I can memorize. It is all cognitive, but the idea is that these ideas, they need to really come down from our minds, enter our hearts, and become visceral, meaning they will be permeating our lives and our actions, our thinking, our relating, our values will be an expression of the knowledge, of the certainty of our immortality. Now, um, when we can look at immortality by studying these concepts in the codification, but also what Spiritism also does, it gives us some proof about immortality. And we have that when we look at mediumship, also when we study the anemic phenomena. Anemic phenomena are the phenomena that's going to speak about some of the powers of the spirit. So when I read someone's thoughts, it's really not my brain who's doing that. It is the spirit possibility to capture. It's ultimately translated into the brain, but it is an anemic phenomenon. When I transport myself outside of my body to a different place, this is also an anemic phenomenon that speaks about the existence of the spirit. And there is one passage from the gospel that I believe speaks very deeply about immortality in many different levels. And this passage is the passage of the Transfiguration that we find in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, items 28 to 36. I'm going to bring to you until number 35. And this translation is from the international version of the Bible. So the text says, about 8 days after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John, and James with him and went up onto a mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. Two men, Moses and Elijah, appear in glorious splendor, talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring fulfillment in Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy, but when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. As the men were leaving Jesus, Peter said to him, Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us put three shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what he was saying. While he was speaking, a cloud appeared and covered them as they were afraid as they entered the cloud. A voice came from the cloud saying, This is my son, who I have chosen. Listen to him. So, why is this passage such a revelation about immortality? It is a revelation because we have in this passage, in the transfiguration of Jesus, an anemic phenomenon where um, his spirit expands itself and he shows himself in his essence. He goes beyond the physical body and people can see the level of light, of brightness of his spirit. We have the materialization of two dead men, right? Moses and Elijah. They're there, materialized in front of Jesus, and the other disciples who were with Jesus are able to see them. We have a physical effect of direct voice that comes from the cloud, and everybody can hear that. So this passage talks a lot about immortality. But if we go beyond, a little beyond, and look into the context of the passage, we are going to learn that at that time there were three big festivities that require people to travel to Jerusalem. They were Passover, the week of Pentecost, and the festivities of the tabernacles or tents. And with these three big celebrations, the population would then travel to Jerusalem, who was believed to be the highest point of the earth at the time. So, in all the festivities, the traveling meant that they were on an ascensional journey, a journey of elevation, a spiritual journey. The particular festivity that we are going to talk about that happened at the time that this event is described is the festivity of the tents. So, what does that festivity meant? It meant that people would actually set up tents outside of their houses, on their yards, sometimes on the flat roof of the houses. They would set their tents over there, and the whole family, everybody, would spend 7 days in those tents. Why? The whole idea was for them to live again the experience of the Exodus. So the experience of the journey taken by Moses and his population. They would be 7 days in those tents, unable to go back into the house. And during the 7 days, they would be reading and studying the scriptures. Now, when we look at the characters of the passage, right, you have Jesus, you have Moses, and Elijah. So Moses he represents, he was the leader of the big exodus, which we're going to call the archetypical exodus or pilgrimage that took place at the time. Elijah was also someone who underwent several journeys or pilgrimages to the desert. So there is a lot about pilgrimages and journeys within the context of this passage. When we think about the big exodus, the one led by Moses, it's interesting when we dive into the meanings behind the movement, the journey, because the word Egypt means narrow, means constricting, means limiting. So when we think about that particular journey, we're talking about leaving a place of limitation, of constriction, to a place of freedom, to a place of expansion. Now, let's take all these little pieces that I put together here for you in the understanding of this passage. And I ask yourself, what is your physical life? What is your incarnation, if not one of these journeys? If not one of these pilgrimages where we leave our house and we set a tent temporarily, as the spirits have told us in the spirits book, for a particular mission. Because pilgrimage is not only a journey, but usually it's a journey that has a mission behind it, has an intent. So our incarnation is precisely that, my dear friends. We are all pilgrims, and we are here temporarily. And my physical body and your physical body is the tent that you have been granted to stay here for 7 days, reading, experiencing, growing, so that one day you can go back, pick up your tent, leave your tent, and go back to your real home. So the idea is, what if we could take this idea, right, that we all pilgrims, and take it from being just this intellectual understanding to become a visceral experience, or no longer just a cognitive understanding, but be an emotional daily experience, right? That we are here temporarily, that we are pilgrims, and that we need to bring this idea of immortality to our daily lives, to moment of our existences. Now, there is a very interesting one last point about this passage that I want to highlight before we start closing, is when Peter said to Jesus, "What if we, like, we are right here in the top of this mountain, right? There is all the festivities going on down there in Jerusalem, where the crowd is gathering. We are here in this very intimate moment. Why not set up our tent right here? Get Moses and Elijah to stay with us, and let's be here in this transcendent moment together." And the text is clear and says that Peter had no idea what he was talking about. And what does that mean? That means that it's easy. Perhaps you're listening to me and you are feeling a little bit more connected to the sense of immortality right now. And you're like, yes, this makes sense, right? So we are here gathering in this virtual encounter. We could be in our spiritual center. We could be hiking on the top of a mountain ourselves, looking at a beautiful mountain in a sunset, isolated from the world in a vacation or something like that. And it is easy to experience transcendency when we are in these sacred, sporadic, occasional moments. But Jesus said, "No, Peter, that makes no sense. I want to take the idea of immortality down to Jerusalem, where all the people are, to the middle of the festivities, because the message of the gospel is not for specific moments where we stop and pray. The message of the gospel needs to be present when your kid's crying, when you come home and you're tired, when you're dealing with a difficult relationship. This is what we are called to do. This is what this message is inviting us to do, which is to bring the idea of immortality to our daily lives, to the ways in which we experience our existence. Listen, we are living very, very difficult moments. I probably can say that each one of us knows someone who have died or someone who have lost someone else. I have friends who have lost both parents in a span of 25 days. I have personally seen two distant cousins who were sisters to die within the span of maybe 3 months. I experience every single day when I go to work right now the death of a patient of mine. These are very challenging and difficult times. But Spiritism brings us this one tenet that it's, we say it's so basic, but it's so fundamental to give us ground right now, to understand that we are here, that this moment here, it's a passage. Our physical bodies are just that, tents that we set up temporarily. And yes, it will be painful because it is within our condition. The pain, the longing, the emptiness, the void. But we can go through this with an understanding and an emotional experience of someone who knows that we too will go back, that these people remain alive, very alive, that the love that they have, that we have for them, will never, ever disappear. In fact, they are close to us, following our steps. And so it gives us the certainty, it gives us the consolation, and it helps us to live every day of our lives in a more detached way. And when pain strikes, grief and sorrow, let us feel it. Let us feel it. It is important to mourn the ones who have gone, but let's do it with our eyes up to the sky, with the hope, with the joy of knowing that we're all evolving. That pilgrim complete his 7 days. He is now free to go back home, and we will reunite with them in a bigger festivity in the spiritual realm, where we all gonna say together one day, we completed one more journey towards the day that we will no longer need to journey in that way. So this is the message of immortality that actually I feel very moved and emotional in speaking about that and in telling you that we have a treasure in our hands. Let's spread this message not only with our words, but the way in which we are living, the way in which we are dealing with the pandemic, speaking to people about life. There is only life in the universe, and that showing people how these principles can help us in face of all the challenges, all the pain and all the sorrow, to stay grounded and to keep our heads up with faith, with acceptance, with hope, and with certainty that there is only life in the universe. So thank you, guys.
Suzana, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
That's, my connection is up and down, so that's why
Yeah,
I'm asking. But thank you for this, and I totally agree with you. I think Spiritism is a gift for us that we very, very, very likely asked for it to sustain us during these challenging times. And I like the analogy of the tents. And although we all have our tents, right, separate with our challenges in daily lives, I'm always grateful that our tents are close enough that we can all get together and talk about immortality in a world where, that immortal vision is not always um, ingrained into our human understanding yet, right? So it gives us the strength to hear also from others and give us encouragement to continue. So thank you.
you're very
Uh,
welcome. Have a
would you
great day,
like
everyone.
would you like to do a final prayer, dear? Not letting you out yet.
Sure,
Thank you.
absolutely, I will.
Thank you.
All right. So please join us at this time in our final prayer by saying, Dear Father, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today, all of us, incarnate and discarnate, reflecting about the beauty of Spiritism and the beauty of your gospel in this message that brings so much consolation and hope to our hearts and lives. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We pray for the ones who don't have with us, like us, the same consolation, for the ones who are in despair, for the ones who are mourning, for the ones who are in deep pain, for the ones who are transitioning, sometimes alone in the cold rooms of hospitals. We pray for them. We ask you to be with all of us, giving us the strength to continue to go through these times of challenges, of difficulties, with courage to speak and to demonstrate our faith and to convert the teachings into actions that can help not only ourselves but all the ones who are journeying side by side with us. Bless our homes, our families, our loved ones. Bless this humanity as we all undergo this difficult transition. Remind us always that we are in this big journey towards better days, towards a new earth, towards a regeneration world. And the ones who are able to persist in goodness, in love, will prevail and will inherit a new earth and a new time. May the hope and the consolation be always within our hearts, holding us strong and helping us to get up each day, one day after another, with courage and determination to get our day, to fulfill our duties, and to love always. Thank you so much, dear Father, for the blessings of this morning, and so be it.
So be it. Thank you once again, Susanna. Thank you, everyone who joined us. It's always great to have you all here, the Conscious Living family. God bless you all. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you all in our next encounters, in our study groups, or in our next upcoming lectures. Bye, everyone.
Bye now.